So the thing that's not happening is my story. The story is not happening. What's happening is just whatever is happening. The story is never what's happening. It's a story about what might happen, what could happen, what did happen. It turns out, let me let Alice in. It turns out just what is, funny enough, doesn't need a story. Right? So the fan doesn't need a story, the computer monitor doesn't need a story, because it's already being what it is. And notice that the computer monitor is not calling itself a computer monitor. A tree is not calling itself a tree. Nothing is calling itself anything. So that's the freedom. Is the freedom that you're not and have never been in any story. So pain can arise, but the pain is not telling a story. It's not even calling itself pain. So as soon as I use a word, that's why this can't be explained, right? Because as soon as I use a word, I'm in description. I'm talking about. And this is never about. It's too immediate. It just is. So all stories are about me, about other, about here, about there, about better, about worse. They're always about something. But this immediacy that's just here, that's just happening, it's got no story. So everything is just what it is without the story about it. So that's the suffering, because me lives in story. Me, that's where I'm going to get what I want through story. But it's only ever a story. It can never achieve reality. It will always be a story. So you say, well, Michael, what's it like to live without stories? Well, that leaves just what's ever happening. And you don't know what that is. Because if you think you know what's happening, then that's just another story. Because this doesn't know. The tree doesn't need to know It's a dream. Was it you, Dan, that was saying to me that we were talking on the phone today about like my story is like slavery? Like you're a slave to your story. So you miss just what's happening, just the simplicity of the fan, a noise, your bum on the chair. Shout out to Lisa Carnes. The simplicity of what is doesn't need a story, right? Somebody belching, it doesn't need a story. It's just someone appearing to belch. That's it. That's the whole show. But if we go into about and what about and this happened because of this, and we get lost in the story, then suddenly this is just not enough because I need better story. That's what I need.
Well, nobody needs a story. I mean, except a character needs a story. The me character needs a story because that's where the me character lives and can be. In the me character can only have my life inside of a story. So I need a story if I'm me, if I'm that story character, then I need a story, but that's all just story. There's nothing real in any of it. It doesn't exist except in story. That's why we call it a story. So there isn't anybody who needs a story. That person has never been born, never really, doesn't ever exist except in a story. The story is telling the story for itself, and that's where all the me, so-called me's live, but that's why we say there is no me. There's never been a me except a story of a me. And there's your freedom again. Well, you already said that. That's the freedom you're talking about. You can only be captured by a story. You can't be captured by this. There's no capturing, nothing to capture and no one to be captured except in the story. Then you have a story of being captured and held prisoner and controlled by my situation or everything. All the things that go on in the story then become my problems. But again, that's just for the character in the story. That's all.
Yeah. And even when you say, yeah, but, right? Because that's the me, right? You'll hear someone, if, yeah, but what about this? So
What about this story?
Yeah, exactly, Dan. It's so what can be missed is that's all you're going to get is another story. That's what the me can't see. That its only tool is story. That's its only weapon. So if you're telling me a bad story about myself, then maybe I have to tell a good story to counterbalance that I'm not this bad person. That you see what I'm saying? You have to enter the realm of imagination and storytelling. Let me let Joanna in. You have to enter the realm of imagination and storytelling and take it seriously.
Except even taking it seriously doesn't really do anything. It doesn't really make it real. It just makes a story of taking it seriously. You can't really get in, there just really is never anybody in the story. The story is never anything but a story. Yeah.
Taking it seriously is an interesting concept to explore.
Yeah. Well, that is what we call the me, kind of. It's me is the one who is taking it seriously, taking the story seriously. That is the experience of me.
Sometimes.
Well, yeah.
Sometimes the me is trying to be funny, or the me is like all caught up in illusions and doesn't take it serious.
Yeah, but then it's well, okay. I don't want to argue with you, but what you're saying is taking the being funny seriously. It's still taking the story seriously. In other words, the story may be of me being funny and not caring about anything, or it may be, there's all kinds of versions of the story, but the me is that thing that is really taking whatever the story is, taking it seriously. And if that's not there, then there's no me.
What I get with taking it seriously is to uh, to give it a lot of meaning and attention,
Yeah,
to give it more body than just like to give it a
yeah,
lot of weight.
right. Okay, yes. Although it really turns out that the me really is giving everything a lot of weight, even when it's being very happy-go-lucky and carefree and whatever story it is, because underneath that, it still feels like there's a feeling of being me, which is feeling separate from this experience and feeling limited by my own story. That's underneath it, which is why we kind of all maybe end up at some point in a meeting like this to see through the whole thing or whatever, but to see that there's freedom, and that this is freedom and this is not a story. Because what I'm saying is all stories are cages. I mean, that's just the way it is. Because the me is a limitation. And this is not limited. What is not limited. It's just free.
How would you recognize that freedom? So no me, no story. And what's left, I'm understanding, is just what is, which is free. What is that freedom that we're speaking of, and how would you know it's free? How could we say that is free? Because we can't know it, but we say it's free.
So Dawn, we had so much fun working together last week. Are you up for another round?
Oh, I love this stuff.
Okay, so everything you just said, this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. So the me will now ignore everything that was just shared and begin to ask a yeah, but, or, and if you can you notice, Dawn, that that's all story, what you were asking for, how could I know that? That's a story. That would be language. So again, that's sort of the wrong direction, if I can speak like that. It's not going to help you because words are limited by definition, right? Every word is a little story, but it's a limited story. So what word, Dawn, do we have for everything?
There would be no words or the word everything if you were
And even
going
the
to
word
speak it.
everything,
Right.
right, falls short
Okay.
because you
Right.
try imagining everything. You can't imagine
Right.
everything.
can I just say last week, Dawn, and it's come into my mind, like, I just picture you saying it. I don't, just has continued through this week. And you were standing outside last week, and then you kind of like, I'm not going to get this exact, but you kind of like went, so it's just this. You were like, looked around and you were like, you like had this smile on your face and you were like, just this. And then that was like it, you know? And that keeps coming in for me because it's just this. It is. And I think even the mind goes, there's like just this, and just can sound kind of like just this. And so then the mind goes like, it's not just this, other people are experiencing these things, or it's just this. But it kind of, the reason why just works is it's kind of like, another word I would say is like simply this. It's simply this. It's just this. And you had a moment last week where I felt like that, and I say you because it wasn't even there. There wasn't necessarily a you going just this. It just came in, and it's no words. It full stop. Everything else is put to bed. It's just this. So
Yeah, beautiful, Jenny. And there's no answer for anything. Like, again, any answer is going to be a story. And what we're pointing to isn't in a story. No story can contain this.
To me, the freedom is like there's no one doing it. So if there's no one doing it, that is the freedom.
Yeah, it can't be recognized because it only is recognized. It only is recognition and freedom are the same thing. I mean, it's all the same. If it was recognized, it would be recognized by a person, by someone, and it would be through an action of recognizing, you know, some kind of achievement of recognizing. But no, that's not what it's, you know, what it is. It's only, we're talking about what's just here, what is. So who's going to recognize it, and how is it recognized? This is all recognition. It's just this is the recognition. It's all there is. But the one who's trying to recognize can't see that, because I've already translated this into a task of recognizing, and a feeling that I'm something that isn't quite recognizing the freedom and needs to, and maybe will if I do the right thing, or I don't know, something happens, then maybe no, that's the story. But this is recognition. There's not any more recognition than just what is. And I don't know, I would ask you, Don, why are you interested in recognition? Where does that come from? What is being looked for, and who's looking for it? Yeah.
For me, I am looking for freedom.
All right, of course, yes.
Yeah. And for me to find that freedom, there's got to be, I'll have to do something. And to wrap my mind around that there's nothing to do, which is what I'm sort of getting, that,
Yeah.
I mean, okay, I don't know how not to do.
Yeah.
And this concept of not doing, well, it just doesn't make sense to me, of course, into my mind,
Yeah,
that there's
of course.
nothing to do. It's like, well, that doesn't make sense. So I'm really,
Yeah.
I want to get it. You know?
Yeah, that's the trouble.
Yeah.
I think the challenge is that what we're getting at is there's no you that's doing it. Like doing happens, right? We're not sitting on a mountain in the Himalaya just sitting there. And even that would be doing something. right? Doing just happens through us. That there's no me actually doing it. There's no individual doing it. There's no one thing doing it. It's just, it's like flow. It's like, I'm adding a lot of words here to something I think I just will stop at. Full
No,
stop.
Joe, it's great. Can
Oh.
I jump in here? Because a really simple example is, let's say you walk into the doctor's office, yeah? You walk into the doctor's office for an appointment, okay? And then when the appointment's out, you leave. Now, if there's a me, you're gonna have a story about that. I went to the doctor's office, I sat in the waiting room, some of the people looked weird, you know, blah, blah, blah. There's gonna be like a whole story analyzing and judging. Versus actually, you can't say really what happened. I mean, if we really want, we could say, well, it appears as if a body, right? But now I still have to tell story. Walked into a doctor's office. Doctor's office is a story. Body is a story. So every time I go to words, I'm in trouble because I've unwittingly fallen into the spider's web of limitation. And now I'm trying to look for the unlimited in my spider's web of limitation through language and story. So what I hear Dawn saying is, Michael, please tell me the story that's the freedom. I want the freedom story. But what's the message here this evening? There's no freedom in stories. This freedom is already here, and you can't even call it freedom. Even calling it freedom is too much. Because freedom is like for somebody.
No efforts will get you there. Nothing can be done to get there because you have no control over what you're doing. There is no doing. You can't plan it. You can't control. You can't say, okay, this practice is going to get me there, because that is doing.
I like what you said, Joanne. And then Kosi has shared with me that he says, if you go to the bathroom, you're already going to the bathroom before you say, I'm going to the bathroom. Everything happens before there's an I. And you just attribute it all to yourself. Like, I'm going to take credit for this. I'm going to take credit for getting in my car, fixing my car. And there is no one to take credit. It's just happening. So if I can refrain from saying that I went to the doctor, going to the doctor just happened in a sense, at least in my mind. And that has been very helpful for me to see that there is the only thing, this I, is when I attribute something to it. Sometimes I'll just have to say, sometimes when we talk about story or ego or something like this, I sit here and I think, oh, it sounds like the bad guy. Oh my God, I got to get rid of it. It sounds like the bad guy. And yet all this story is just appearing too. And that is what is right now, is that I'm self-conscious. But that's not the bad guy. That's just kind of what is too. But that's just my interpretation sometimes of
Yeah.
how
Right.
I hear things.
Yeah. No, thank you, Alice, for sharing. Appreciate that. And it's lovely. And I would just add that good guy or bad guy are both stories.
Mhm. And they appear in what is, so it's okay. They're both totally okay, because that's what's appearing right now. And if I identify with them, it's often the story, but that's okay too. I think the okayness of everything has been really helpful to me, because I can have a tendency to want to push away, and this is not, maybe I'm being redundant, repeating what you're saying, Michael.
No, I'm just saying that there's no freedom in any story. So there can be a loss of interest in stories where, oh, why did she look at me like that? Why did he say that? Oh, how rude. Those narrations.
Yes.
Now it's fine if somebody else believes them. Of course they're going to believe their stories. I mean, that's what me do. But I just noticed that there wasn't any freedom in judging and storing about, there's that word again, about what's happening. That's your red flag, because what's happening isn't about anything. What's happening right now is too immediate. A story is always about, it's a day late and a dollar short. It's all memory. It's pontification.
And also, the reality is happening whether we see it or not. No matter what is overlaid on top, it doesn't change the fact.
Yeah, you're saying this is always this.
Exactly, yeah.
Right, that's a really good point. I know your new name's KM, but I'm so used to God's plan.
You
But
can stick with that. It's okay.
yeah. It's just noticing that all my life I've lived in story. Like there can be a noticing that. Like
That sounds like a story, Michael.
yeah. So you can notice that. You're like, wow, what is this moment right now? Is it telling a story? The moment itself. So the fan, the air conditioner, the sky, it isn't telling any story. It's just being what it is.
And it can even be as small as one thought that is there that is keeping you from seeing it. The thought may be, I don't see reality.
Right. Yeah, right, Dan, that's like Muji's, the thumbnail blocks out the moon.
Hmm. Yeah, except that it doesn't really block out anything. I mean, it seems to, but even that doesn't do anything.
That's the illusion. It doesn't harm you. It doesn't hurt you. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't hinder your progress because there is no progress to infinity.
Well, yeah, I guess what I'm trying to communicate here is that there's no story that's right, so there's no story that's wrong.
Because there's not two.
So then the story is inherently free?
Everything is.
It's free whether you think it is or not.
There is only free. There isn't anything else. And the idea of anything else is the story. And even free, that word, it's a label. We have it, but it comes from, we kind of have inherited it from all this me idea. The me feels like I'm not free. So I have this idea of I can get free, or I could be free, or whatever.
It comes from the idea of suffering. It comes from the idea of duality, from the idea of two.
Yes, separation. But there isn't any. So there's no freedom, really. Everything is just what it is. It's beyond freedom. It's beyond any word, and not even beyond. We don't need the words. We left all the words back in the story.
There's nothing outside of this.
Right. And it's not known. No one knows what it is. And the me in the me story is always trying to ask the next question to find out, but what is this? I need to get my hand on this and figure it out. And but that story will go on forever for itself. It has nothing to do with anything. This freedom is here, just this already.
So I want to just jump in and share that one of the most at the end, right? And Jenny, you brought this up in the past, like one of the killer stories for the seeker is, because I remember feeling it. There's just one more little thing I need to get. I'm just ready for that ball to fall into the hole. Just a little tap and I'm right there. And that is such a story. That is such baloney. Even if it feels real, it's not. It's just another empty story.
And it's happening with one thought. One thought fuels it. The problem
It just
is that
stops
you
with
think-
for who? For who? For
Yeah.
who? Who's waiting for the last thing?
Exactly.
For who?
Nobody.
It's so beautifully,
It's empty.
I mean, yeah,
right? It's empty.
yeah.
There's nothing in there. It's all completely empty. All of it. So
Yeah.
that's right.
There is nobody thinking that one thought.
I was
the po-
just going to share this. I was feeling like I was just trying to, or this just wasn't as a trying to get anywhere. It was a curiosity of like feeling just feeling what is kind of. And so I was putting attention like on my hand, but without words. I couldn't say what is felt there was coming from a hand. And I also can't say that there's any location to any even seemingly internal experience. So anyway, I don't know if that sounds crazy, but it's all words.
Right. Even just say that I'm here, right? I'm here. That's a story. I'm here is a story. Who is here? If you look, it's nothing there.
Or I'm seeing. I mean, if you took the word away, seen, which is a word, I don't know if I'm seen or you're, just if you just I keep looking at those words that seemingly make the world this logical place that I've been living in, I guess, but they're kind of all untrue. Or
Yeah. Yeah, there's no right word. There's no wrong. So I'm seeing is the story. The I part, that's the add-on, that's the burden, that's the weight of me. If I add a weight, that story is it's unnecessary. It's not needed because seeing is happening whether you what is it Paul Hederman says? He goes, just try if a crow flies across the sky, you're going to see it whether you like it or not. So this idea that you're in charge, that you're
the idea that there is someone doing things, or that you can somehow, through some sort of process, alter the path, or that there's a path at all.
right, that there's a path at all. See, that's what the me, quote unquote, never questions, right? I'm seeking. It never questions that this whole charade. Like maybe I'm none of it.
And it is so terrifying because all that is left is for the me to cease. So it can be very frightening.
But the frightening also is a story, correct? So
You could say that as long as we're here, there will be stories.
I have to say though, and there does feel like there's a qualitative difference when a story, when I believed my stories, So I thought somebody aggrieved me or I got my feelings hurt. And I really thought that, like it felt really real versus there's no one here to be insulted and there's no one over there to hurl insults. So
It's
without that, yeah, go ahead.
it's the victimhood. It's the victimhood part.
Yeah, that's not seen as a story. That's seen as real. No, it's not a story. I am a victim. It's very convincing.
But there can only be a victim if there is two, if there's a perpetrator and someone to be harmed by them. If there's an object and a person.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is that the me requires duality, requires separation.
Otherwise, it ceases to exist. Which is where the fear can come into play. That's why people hold on so strongly to their identities. And why we become angry when someone contradicts that identity.
Did Nkosi reach you, Michael, to tell you he was not coming tonight?
Oh no, I didn't know that. Is that the case?
Yes, he was feeling ill.
Oh, okay. Thanks for letting us know, Alice. I had no idea.
Yes, he wasn't sure you received this message or not, so I thought I'd report it.
Oh, good. Thank you for that. Well, we're going to wish Nkosi the best and speedy recovery. I assume everybody here is familiar with Nkosi. He's one of a kind, really.
I want to say it is beautiful whenever you realize that, if realize is even the word, there is no control. That's the moment whenever all efforts can be relinquished.
Well, there's actually no one to do that.
Yeah, you can't get there. It happens. It just happens.
Well, I'm sorry, I hate to keep disagreeing, but nothing actually happens. That's the dream, that something needs to happen.
Yeah. More stories.
Or we could say they're both true. The thing that doesn't happen can happen. Can appear to happen.
It can be that things appear to happen. It doesn't necessarily mean there's weight to it. Is that right?
I'll buy that.
Well, think about it. What's going on in your head, right, when you're lost in story and you're suffering? Isn't it just a repetitive thought going around and around and around, and that the me is looking for some way out? If I could just get rid of this repetitive thought.
Yeah, and it seems like it doesn't halt until surrendering happens.
But there is no suffering. There is no surrendering. Getting caught up in that duality again.
Dawn. Love it. Yeah, it's just that you can see how quickly we go to story. So it's a really good thing to notice. Like instead of just being with what is, so being with what is doesn't have a story. And what's happening here isn't making a story, right? Nothing's making a story right now about this.
But how do you be with what is?
Well, there's no you to be or not be. There's just what is. And there's just what is.
Yeah. In a way that makes it feel like it can be hopeless.
Yeah, but that would be another story.
Right.
I can only say that when I'm really with what is, and that it's absolutely incredible freedom that brings tears to my eyes.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm losing anything. I've tried everything in that moment.
A question for you, Alice. So when you're in that state, did you do anything? Did it just, you were in a story, living your life, and then all of a sudden you're not in the story? Or how does that occur for you?
Well, I'll have to give the preview. I spend time with Nkosi every week, and I have called him with incredible suffering. And based on the questions he asked me to find the individual, at one point it just all drops. I would like to be. So far it works with him when I'm in incredible suffering sometimes. And I know there's a way that it's worked with me, but very rarely. So just to be as honest as I can, where I've and you know, the words are crazy, you know, I've seen this liberation, but is it really an I that's seen it? Liberation has appeared. That's me saying enough.
So the liberation is really the absence of a me altogether. It's what they call the emptiness.
So
Which it,
it's not the elimination of a me, because there's no me to begin with. So I'm always get it. So like I'm okay as is.
No, you're not.
Okay. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, no, you're I don't mean I didn't mean like you're not okay. It's that you're not okay and you're not okay because you're not there. The idea of the dawn is just a thought.
Okay.
And when that's what I mean, it's a story. Dawn's a story. And when that's seen through, there's just what is. And suddenly there can be like an obviousness to this that, oh, like you only know you exist when you either think or talk about yourself. If you're not thinking or talking about, then there's no you. It's just all story. It's all imagination. But I know it seems so real. Really, it's so convincing. But eventually you realize you're not any story, no story, good, bad. Anything can arise at any time. It's all happening spontaneously. Nobody's doing it. It's just, it's all this.
I have one question. Does this equate to death, or is there no life or death?
Hold on, I gotta mute some people. Okay. So life and death is for the me. Is a story. But this, again, this has no story.
So that's why you're saying words can't really do it justice. Got it.
And I gotta say, they're more fun. Because now, like a great actor, right, Leighton? Like a good actor, you then can really sink your teeth into the part. You can play. I was telling Alice a story where I made a trip to a doctor's office and they forgot to tell me it was canceled, and I paid for parking and I got up to the 6th floor in Century City and she says, "Oh, we can't see you today." So I told her in that moment, what was coming out of me was irritation. Like, why didn't you guys call me? Come on. So that's just what is, but it wasn't held on to. Once I, was done, it was over, but that in the moment. So I wasn't trying to be spiritual and I wasn't trying to not be spiritual. There was just the unfolding of the moment. And so that's another quote unquote problem with being a seeker is you have the spiritual idea of what spiritual people should look like and what no, it's all of it. It's everything.
Well, it is the idea. What is spiritual? Aren't we just human beings?
No, because that's another story.
Yeah, it's the wordless point again. It's trying to describe something that is impossible to be described.
Absolutely. Any other comments or questions before we close out this evening?
I just wanted to share one more thing. Is that when I am doing this work with Nkosi, he will bring me back. The individual is the one that suffers. And the big question is, who is it that's seeing all of this happening? And if I can remember that, who is seeing it, there is no attachment to anything. And that's kind of a real big question. Who is seeing this? So I wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice.
So one thing with that, with all your work with Nkosi and listening to him, it would seem that he does have, I'm going to call it a technology wrong word, he's got questions. Let's use that because he's got questions. And I've heard those questions before from other teachers, questions that can possibly lead you or, oh God, lead you to whatever it is we're talking about here, whatever this experience is, that there are questions, that there may be a way to know. I don't know.
What do you say, Alice?
I'm looking at all your faces and go, no.
Well, I definitely feel that way, but I also feel that's what this meeting is about too, that there can be questions in this meeting that could do the same thing. And I saw that moment with you last week too, Don. That was very powerful. And I loved when you did the papa thing. You really got into it. That was beautiful.
Don, just a quick comment. When you were saying that lead you somewhere, there isn't anywhere to be led to. Number one, there isn't anybody that needs to be led, nor is there a leader, nor is there another place. It's just this, so there is nowhere to go.
It's crazy making, Peter. It really is when I hear you speaking, because really when we put a list of words we're not supposed to say, we can't really communicate.
Yes, sure. Just this notion, there's this constant notion that this isn't enough. There is something else than this. And I think the entire meeting, the headline is, there is just this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like Frank. How do you say it? McCoffey? I can't say his last name. He says, there's just what's happening is as big as the story gets. There's just what's happening, just what's appearing to happen is as big as the story gets. Thank you guys so much for coming. We appreciate each
Michael.
and every one of you. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Everyone.
very great evening.
Thanks, Michael.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.